Hey, welcome everyone. Before we get started, I just want to give a huge shout out and say thank you to Emergo Academy. They are the change makers and the dreamers and the doers, and they want people to live louder. They want them to lead bolder and they want to ignite change. And what I love about these guys is they are the brain first approach. And how come I know so much about them is because I've actually taken their training. I was certified as a crisis and recovery coach through Dave and Susan Kenny, who are the two coaches. And these guys have ended up becoming my two best friends. I mean, these guys are amazing. We're always a phone call away or a text away. And even if you're not interested in being a certified and a crisis recovery coach, just learning what these guys have to teach about the brain first approach, I'm telling you, it will impact your life. It is such an amazing, amazing program. They teach you how to refire the neurons in your brain, how to help you make better choices in your life. Now, of course, I'm not saying that we won't ever make wrong choices in our life because we will. That's just how life goes, but to be able to understand things a lot more. So the brain first approach is a very, very sweet spot, which is rooted in science and it's proven to work. There are a few more places now that are starting to pop up, especially in the recovery community, that is using this brain first approach. I really don't know, maybe only one place here in the Salt Lake Valley or Utah County that's doing it. But guys, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about the brain first approach, I highly, highly recommend contacting Dave and Susan Kenny. Again, that's emergoacademy.com. Reach out to them. Thank you guys. We definitely appreciate your sponsorship. And today, this is going to be a great conversation because this is something I feel that both my guests and I really feel passionate about. So today we're going to be talking about truth with my friend Adam Nugent. So Adam, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be on the other side of addiction podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for it's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation and any bits of wisdom or things that I've learned. I'm looking forward to sharing that and hopefully inspire and help others to know that really no matter what's happened in their life, they can change, they can shift. You know, it. I'm really passionate about just my own journey. Having experienced the highs of highs, the lows of lows, and literally every pillar of my life, and knowing, and as is life, it's interesting. It's like we want all the highs and all this grandiose, stuff, whatever that happens to be, money, relationally, physically, mentally, emotionally, and my belief is you really can't truly appreciate the highs unless you've experienced the lows.
Mhm.
Um, you don't know what you're missing, and I find really frankly that like when we want to get to the core of it, the title of if you will of our podcast today is really just the truth. What is the truth? You know, and the truth, you know, it might be cliche, but they say the truth hurts. The truth does hurt. The truth can really, really be painful, but it does set you free. And I think the greatest pain that any one of us can feel when it comes to speaking the truth or being truthful really is looking in the mirror and looking at ourselves. That's honestly the most painful piece of it, I believe. And yes, things can happen with people we love and things that we do. Mostly it's not intentional. I don't think anybody, well, there are people, but I think generally speaking, most people don't intend to hurt somebody intentionally,
Yeah.
you know. But it's like when you can actually look at the mirror, I always say the hardest person we have ever faced, currently faced, or will ever face is ourselves. And when you can look in the mirror and just get to the core and the root and just be completely honest with everything, um, it sets you free. And it's a freedom, having been on both sides of that is priceless. You there aren't words that you can really put to it. But to get there is very painful. And
Yeah.
it and and everybody has different ways that they quote unquote get there. And that's the beauty of pain. That's the gift of heartache, of failure, of rock bottom, you know? And, again, we all want more light. We want more of the things that we consider quote unquote good. And yet we can't have that unless we're willing to face our darkness, because the reality is we all have it. We all have a dark side. We all have, that serial killer voice in our heads, or it's things that come up and, things that we would never speak out loud, but we think them. I mean, everybody has that side of it. And the light that we're all searching for, what I've found in my own experience many times, is actually found in the darkness. The
Oh,
light that we're searching
absolutely.
for, you have to go into that. I work with men today, and when I first got into this, because of my life experiences that led me to this, my original why was I wanted to help men not go to the depths of hell that I went to. That was like, I want to help them avoid it. I want to help them avoid it. And what I've learned, and as I look back, and like the beauty that I experienced in those dark moments, again, wasn't at the time painful. I nearly took my life, suicidal. I mean, that is a darkness I hope nobody ever gets to. And yet, while I don't want anyone to have to go to the lows of lows that I went to, I also now look at it like, I'm actually here to help you go into your own darkness. You don't have to go alone. Yes, you have to do the work. Yes, you have to do it, but you've got someone by your side that's been there, and let's go in there. Because the reality is, from our conversation when you were on my podcast, there's consequences for not going there. We turn to addictive patterns or substances or whatever to avoid the pain, and all we're doing is kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And so what happens is when we get into that, it's like, I want to avoid, and then all of a sudden, what we've been avoiding is inevitable. It's going to come out, and we're just delaying. We're kicking the can down the road. And so when we can rip the band-aid off, whatever that happens to be, face it, speak the truth, own the role that we're playing on, that's when you all of a sudden start to come back up. And that's the beauty of pain, of fear, of darkness. I was thinking about this morning. Um, Sometimes I'll sit and talk to myself, whatever. And if someone posed the question to me, it's like, what's the greatest gifts that you've had in your life? You know? And a lot of people will say, for a man, it could be my wife, or a wife or her husband, or it's my career, or whatever it happens to be. It's the good stuff. It's the stuff that feels so good. And as I was asking myself that question, it's like, what are the greatest gifts that I've been given? And it's actually been the most painful things that I've experienced,
Oh, hell yeah, by far.
you know? And which the irony in that is, without experience, for example, heartache, like I went through divorce 7 years ago. I wouldn't wish divorce on my worst enemy. It was pure hell. No one plans on getting divorced. No one gets married like, oh, I'm going to get divorced one day.
Yeah.
So the pain of that, the outcome, the dreams, all the things go away, right? And and I look back on that, and as painful as that was, I went on to experience love, intimacy, connection, deep passion that I never felt in my marriage. And I wouldn't really truly appreciate that had I not appreciated the other side of that. You know, it's kind of like our good friends David over at the Other Side Academy. It's the other side, right? I know
Yeah,
why that just came up.
absolutely.
And so there's beauty in that. And so and the key thing is, and I've had seasons of this too, is when we're in that darkness, one of the slippery slopes, if you will, is when we get into that, is that we tie our identity to that, you know, and that's where it gets in trouble. Then that's what keeps you stuck. That's what keeps you low. That's what keeps you vibrating at that in that same energy, you know. And of course, in my divorce, it's very common these days. Over half the people get, I play a role? 100%. you know? And what's really freeing for me as I was healing that and going through that was taking radical accountability, being very truthful for the role that I played in that. It's easy to point the finger. It's easy to do this. I mean, for anyone that follows me on social, I talk a lot about my divorce. I talk a lot about that. I talk about all of my stuff. Now, I could post just as many videos about all the things that my co-parent, my ex-wife did too. I mean, but what purpose does that serve?
Hmm.
You know? And it's just free. Again, it's just true. Let me just own my part, and I can be free. And yes, I did things that I'm not proud of. Yes, I contributed to this. I didn't have the tools, the resources. I did the best that I could given where I was at that point in my life, and it didn't work out. And it doesn't mean that I'm a failure. It doesn't mean anything necessarily about who I am as a man, meaning my worth. A lot of times we'll tie our worth to this, and I truly believe we are worthy of anything and everything we want, period. And, whatever it happens to be, no matter how big or small, especially the past, it's like no, like that's something I did, that's not who I am, or that's something that happened, that's not who I am. And my belief is when people really have a hard time moving through painful situations, divorce, business loss, whatever happens to be, our worth is attached to it, our identity is attached to that. And it's a process to kind of pull out of that. But when you can finally actually get to the point to where it's like, you know what? That yes, that was painful. I did these things, or this is what happened, but that's not who I am today. You
Well, yeah,
know?
we're all different, right? I mean, Adam, I'm sure you're not the same person you was yesterday
No.
or a week ago, right? That's what's so cool about this life thing, because again, you are so right when you say that we tie our worth into it. So, I made a lot of mistakes as well with a lot of relationships, especially with my last one while she was in the depth of her addiction, right? I wasn't taking accountability even for my own life, which our good friend Dave helped teach me that as well. I was pointing my finger at her constantly. We were in the spot we were in because of her, and this is happening because of her, and this is happening because of her. And it took me some time until Dave spoke to me to realize her journey's her journey. My journey's my journey. And the only way I can figure out my journey is by being vulnerable and opening up and telling my story. And
Yeah.
once I did that, it freed me. It freed me so much. I did not realize how much I was carrying on my shoulders until I was finally able to go, you know what? Man, this ain't her. This is me. This
Yeah.
is what I did to really F this whole damn thing up.
Well, and the truth is, you're in your ex, she did play a role. All those things can be
Yeah.
true, right?
Mhm.
And so did you. And it's easy for us to point the finger. Well,
Yeah.
if he did this or she did in whatever, right? And yes, that's okay. That can be true, but both things can be true at the same time. But yet we also play a role in it. I mean, we're the common denominators in our life. We're contributing to it in every capacity. There, we play a role. And again, the mirror of looking at it, it's like accepting that, right? Even for you, it's like you're like this, and this, and then with Dave, and then with close people reflecting back to you, it's like, wow, what role did you play? What did you do? And it's like, oh, and then the pain, if you will, the realization, the acceptance of the fact that you did play a role, right? It hurts, and yet it sets you free. That's the part, kind of like, all right, it's time to tell truth. What's the role? What's the role? You know, and I believe everything's a choice. We're always choosing. Um, there's a lot of things in life that happen to us that we didn't choose. So, for example, if I, after this podcast, if I pull out of my house and recording this in my house, and I pull out and some car hits me, takes me out, runs a red light, and takes me, and then I'm in the hospital. Well, I didn't, he's the one that ran the red light, but I still chose to pull out of my house. I chose to take the risk to drive down the street. Again, there's risk, there's consequences, both positive and negative. And so, similar to you, you just had this horrific thing happen with your leg. I mean, you lost your leg, right? You didn't, because of some things that happened medically, it's like you didn't choose that. There are other people that contributed to this, but this has happened. And so you can sit and, in your bed or on your couch all day long, being angry, pissed, being a victim, and stay in that. Or what you've done is like, I'm going to rise to the occasion. It's one of the most fascinating things when you share this with me on my podcast. It's like you had a choice, and how many people would have actually just kind of stayed in that kind of energy. And again, it doesn't negate the fact that it happened to you, or in my example, that a car hit me. And so, yes, I'm not responsible for what that car did, but I'm 100% responsible to what to do with it.
Mhm.
And so, again, bringing our power back, it's like we are responsible for every decision we make. And we are also 100% responsible for anything that happens to us. And far too often we give our power away. And and again, it's easy to stay in that. It's easy to stay in that, you know? And so, like, again, something common is divorce. I mean, and my co-parent, my ex-wife, we're great friends. Like our family unit, our kids are better. Like it ended up, it doesn't look the way we wanted it, but like it's been good for our family. Like I'm grateful for the place we're in. It doesn't look traditional like it's supposed to, but nevertheless, it's working for us.
Yeah.
Now, we can be in the same room, we can give a hug, we talk all the time, we're great. I know so many people that have been divorced for 5 years, 10 years, some 20 years, and can't even be in the same room with their ex. So what's the difference? Why can one person be good friends and why can somebody else not? And of course, you could say, well, he did this or she did this. Okay, great. That there are different circumstances with everybody, but at the end of the day, it's a choice. It's a choice. And we get to choose what we do with it. And I believe everything is rooted in a story. Everything. We all have a story, we have a narrative, and we are the authors of our life. And if I'm choosing one thing, then I have the ability and the power to choose something different. I can tell a different story. Everything's rooted in a story,
Yeah.
you know? And again, when we come back to truth, I believe I this has been a kind of a common conversation I've been having a lot lately. I had this conversation with a gentleman this morning. Um, when he was giving an example of somebody living on the streets, right? That's maybe strung out on drugs. And someone says, I truly believe them, you, me, all of us we're doing the best that we can with where we are in life today. And this whole idea of like, oh, I'm only at 20% today, or I'm only at 50%, or we're at 100% always. We're at 100% capacity. And in order to overcome addiction or heal a breakup or rebuild financial loss or whatever it happens to be, it requires, if we're at 100%, we don't have the capacity to bring all these other things in until we let things go that aren't serving us.
Yeah. You have to empty the suitcase every once in a while.
100%. It's constantly feeling, feeling empty, feeling, and it's the letting go is what's the most painful. The letting go can be stories, narratives, people. And the key to getting to the ability to be able to let it go is to get down to the truth, to own the role that you play in it. You're responsible for this, whatever it happens to be. We're playing a role. And it's very painful because many times, for example, our divorce example here, if I'm angry, bitter, walls up, I can't open up, I can't go into another relationship. If I'm in that particular energy, well, the reality is my story and my narrative is keeping me there. And in many ways, that's also justification for to be in a certain place. So if we flip the script and tell a different story or change the perspective, many we're not only letting go of a story or rewriting a story, we're also letting go of our identity, if you will, that's tied to whatever happened in the past. And that's painful. That can hurt. There can be, and it can have people supporting the narrative. And, I'm a big fan. I think the greatest thing with friends is like the greatest friendships are the ones that challenge, that are pushing you to level up.
Mhm.
If something's happened again, divorce, and all your friends are like, well, she's this or he's this, and everybody's like doing that, you need people in your life who are like, well, what role did you play? Is this helping you? Is this productive to sit and badmouth your ex just to support where you're at, to feel validated,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that principle works literally in every pillar of our life. So I've found like, again, we all want more of the quote unquote positive stuff, the good stuff. Who doesn't? I don't want to feel pain. I don't want to be scared. I don't want to feel these things, but I have to face them. I have to own them. I have to accept that that's part of life. And I'm in a season of like just constantly, what's the story attached to this? What am I telling myself? What else can I tell to tell something different? And it's freeing. It is freeing. And one of the big things that I'm practicing right now, like really practicing more than I ever have, is we'll call it the art of detachment or just the accepting what is. So much of our identity, our belief systems are tied to things that have happened in the past. So going back to what I said before, where it's not who I am, it's what I did, or it's something that happened. Well, most of the pain and suffering that we feel is tied to a particular outcome. And the irony in that is nothing in life ever works out exactly how we think it's going to anyway, but yet certain things happen in life and we're so attached to it it doesn't happen, and then there's pain and there's suffering and that can lead to a slew of different things. But when we actually just get to a place like I can't change the past, it's happened. I just have to accept it. So my definition of surrender is like I don't like something, but once I accept it, it loses its power. I'm surrendering to what is. And this has been on the forefront. I've been really trying to implement this, and I'm experiencing more peace internally than I ever have in my entire life. And what's happening is there's all these things, the universe, if you will, is presenting to me to actually practice this. So I posted this on social media a few weeks ago. I I was working late. My two older sons lived with me. They were out of town, and I was headed upstairs to my room, and I heard a noise downstairs. I'm like, what is this noise? I kind of freaked my, what is that? And then I heard a crash. It kind of freaked me out. I'm like, who's down there? So I never go in the basement ever. So I walk down the basement, it's dark, and all of a sudden I'm in 3 feet of water. So there was this, my entire basement's flooded. A water line had broken, and it was like a river was flowing down the hallway. I mean, so much damage. All my furniture's down. I mean, everything's ruined down there. And of course, I'm pissed. I'm angry, so energy's trying, we got to get the water shut off, get everything shut off. And I walk downstairs to go back in, and I'm angry. And I'm sitting in the water, and then it's like, had this like thoughts like, it's done. You can't do anything about it. It's
Mhm.
happened. So literally, I'm standing there in 3 feet of water, and I chose to tell a different, I chose to accept what had happened. It just is. And literally, in the flip of a switch, the energy of it went away. Now, granted, I was still frustrated. I was tired. But I wasn't even really angry. It just is. I can't do anything about it. I got to clean this up. I got to deal with it. Fast forward 2 days later, because the water break was outside, and insurance companies, it's a racket, because if it would have been inside, they'd cover it. But they said since it was outside of the sprinkler line, they're considered that flood. So now insurance isn't going to cover it. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, of course I'm angry. And I'm like, okay, it just is. I can't change it. If I fight it, I'm angry. It's just like, what's the point? It's wasted energy. And so all these things that I don't like that might normally have gotten me all caught up, I'd be in my head, I wouldn't be able to focus, I wouldn't be present. I'm just actually practicing this, and it's easier said than done, but it's a choice.
Mhm.
And when you actually start to choose something, it's fascinating, like how much easier it is to move through uncomfortable, painful, unwanted emotions or events when we can just accept what is. It just is.
Well, and I don't know if it was for you, and probably with some of your past stuff.
Oh,
I
for sure.
I think you end up finding blessings that come out of it when you are willing to just accept and just allow. Because, like you said, once it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I can't change what happened 30 minutes ago. It's impossible. Life just does not allow us to go backwards. We constantly have to move forward. But again, it's how we choose to go that direction. It's like I think in your podcast, when I was a guest on your amazing podcast, I talked about, when the doctor talked about that I could possibly lose my leg. My first thoughts was, hey, my life's over.
Yep.
I'm not going to kick the soccer ball with my grandkids again. I'm not going to drive my truck again. I'm not going to hike again. I can't do this. I can't. And it took me some time to finally start gathering my thoughts and start realizing, you know what? Wait a minute. I can do whatever the hell I want. I'm actually turning a page on a blank piece of paper. I got the pen. I can write it how I can write it. Now I can either sit and feel sorry for myself and sit in my darkness and refuse to light the candle so I can find my way through the darkness, or I'm going to light that damn candle right now and let's see what comes out of this. You know,
And
and
the
and, and
reason
the
you're able to get into that mindset, and you just said this to me too, it's because we've been through a lot of heinous shit.
yeah,
We've been through a lot of painful experiences, and we know the consequences of not doing that.
absolutely.
So yeah, and I appreciate sharing that, and I think this is important because it's a big part of my story. I had, I for 20 years I ran a very successful large investment firm, managed well close to, 1.3, $1.4 billion. And this whole company was my identity. I mean, I was making millions of dollars. It was phenomenal, you know, awards, accolades, and all the things. And then, the last 3 years of it, we had a particular fund that we had set up, and the way we did business relative to the way the attorneys told us how we could do things was out of alignment. And there was a lot of mistakes and different things that were with the paperwork that I was, unbeknownst to me, I wasn't aware of this. but yet I'm the one that signed off on it. And so went through a very, very painful process with the SEC and going through all of this, extremely painful. And it wasn't, which ended up losing my firm. I got fined millions of dollars. My entire identity got shattered. It wasn't just a paycheck. There were people that I loved and cared for deeply that were affected by it. This particular fund lost, we had to close it down. Everybody lost their money. Very, very painful. I wasn't in a season to accept what was happening. So what did I do? I turned to addictive behaviors, anything I could find to numb out or check out on. Like it was so painful. It was so painful. It was rocking me, trying to find a way, trying to find different ways, doing every possible, I mean, wild stuff. I was just scared to death. And, my biggest, for most of my life, my worth was tied to other people and the opinions of others. And it's like God gave me this thing. It's like, you know what? You're going to learn through a very painful, very public thing that, yes, it matters what other people think, but not more than what you think about yourself. And talk about pain and uncomfortableness. So one of the greatest gifts that I have for the people that I work with is I can connect in their shit. Like I know that pain, and it is, I know what it feels like to be in an addictive cycle. It's it it's crazy. We turn to something where there's that temporary relief, and it's funny, we don't want to feel, then we turn to something to feel something different. And if I look back on it, literally, if I could have just ripped the Band-Aid, the pain would have still been just as intense, but it would have been shortened. And I spread my pain and suffering out over a long period of time that didn't need to be there. Those were choices that I was making. And again, lots of empathy and compassion for that guy that was going through that, and I don't want to negate it for anybody. Um, Very painful, extremely. I have a lot of empathy for anyone that gets tied into an addictive pattern. And my belief is we're all addicts to one degree or another. There's emphasis on drugs and alcohol or porn, but you could be addicted to social media, drama, everybody has a modality that they turn to.
And the
You know,
brain fires the same way. It doesn't
yeah,
matter what the addiction is. They've done studies on that, right? If I'm addicted to porn and you're addicted to heroin, our brains are still firing the exact same way. Nothing's different.
yeah, and you're right. Your introduction for your sponsor, it's like it comes down to science.
Mhm.
It's dopamine, and and you can replace that and do stuff, but there's a price to it. And so I just have so much empathy and understanding of I know a lot of your guests, you've had your battles with that in the past, and guess what? It's something that happened. It's not who we are.
Yeah.
One of the things I don't like with AA and some of these programs where it's like, I'm an addict. I'm an addict. And they're constantly stating it 10 years later. It's like, no, maybe I have an addictive personality, or I was an alcoholic. I'm not today. Words are powerful and our identity's tied to that. And so for me, it's like, no, I turning to addictive behaviors? 100%. Like, and I know that about me. Like, when I'm into something, I want to eat or whatever it happens to be. If I'm going to drink alcohol, it's like I'm not I want to get drunk. Like, I know that about me. So it's like it's discipline and understanding that, and how do we, if we know we have this other side of us, it takes discipline to like be responsible. It doesn't mean I'm bad. It's like, hey, I know that I can push it to here, but if I go through it, like there's problems or challenges with it. And what's been freeing again about truth is like speaking to this, owning it, sharing this. I posted something a couple months ago around all the addictive things I've been through, right? Porn, nicotine, alcohol, whatever it happened to be. And the amount of comments, most of them DMs. It's like, gosh, thanks for sharing that. That was real. I'm dealing with the same thing. you know, I was on, I do some fitness training with guys, and I was telling these guys, on group Zooms, there's a bunch of people on the screen, and I'm like, hey, let's be careful that when you all of a sudden stop using sugar as your go-to, that all of a sudden, you're not all of a sudden on Pornhub and you're going crazy there. It's so funny because I can only see this. All the heads, half the heads were shaking, and you know, and so it just is. And yet there's so much judgment about it. And that's what I found is like when you can just speak to it, yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to go online and say, yeah, I had a porn addiction, or I was an alcoholic, or whatever. But all of a sudden it opens the door for others to feel seen,
Yeah.
especially for men, right? It's like there's so much shame and guilt around. We can't share these things. And I always joke, you go to a networking event and everybody's like showboating, like, look at me. It's like, who's got the biggest dick? Who's driving the nicest car? Who's making the most money? And it's like, well, that guy's cheating on his, if we really knew the truth, that guy's cheating on his wife, that guy's scared to death, this guy's, it's like, but everybody's scared to show that side of us. But the reality is like, we all have something.
Yeah.
And what I found is, after losing my investment business and going through the whole thing, is very public, and everybody's talking about it anyway, but I hadn't talked about it, scared to death. So this was in April of 23. So this is, just over 2 years ago. I finally got the cojones, if you will, to go online and talk about it. Scared to death. But I knew I had to. And in my head, I had, I dedicated the entire day to this. I sat and recorded videos over and over and over. I ended up posting the very first one that I did. It was a 10-minute video, raw, real, vulnerable. So I had told myself a story that I'm going to get lambasted by investors and everybody. I'm going to get just pummeled. I told myself that's what was going to happen. And so I post the video, and if you could have, like from a CSI, a crime unit, if you could have had a black light that like tested anxiety, I mean, it would have cracked the bulb. I was literally shaking. I put my phone down. I went for a walk. I came back and I could hear my phone buzzing as I was walking in. It was going crazy. And I go to pick up my phone, scared to death. I'm like, here it is. I was scared, but I did it anyway. I just felt called to do it. It was the complete opposite. Hundreds of messages of compassion, of love, even existing investors like, I got you. I know who, I mean, I'm reading these and tears are streaming down my face, sobbing. It was a silver lining of 3 years of pure hell that I would never wish on anybody. 3 years of this. It's like Groundhog Day. But the thing that was the most surprising were the number of men that sent me private messages. You saved my life today. Thanks for being brave. I'm not alone. And again, here's somebody up to this point that was scared to death to show this other side of me, worried what everybody's going to think. And here I am, basically naked in front of thousands of people, just raw ego. Like it's like everything about me was gone, at least that I viewed about me at that time. And I had this. I'm like, you know what? There's something. The power of just being real, the power of speaking the truth, the power of being vulnerable. And it was such a powerful silver line. I mean, such a beautiful moment. And I had a couple days later, and again, here's the thing, going back to the story. What's the story we tell ourselves? So I had a gentleman call me a couple days later. We're connected on social. I haven't talked to him in 10 years before this. It's like, hey, I saw your video. I'm like, yeah. He goes, can I share my story? So he goes on to share his story about how similar he, lost his identity, retired, didn't know who he was, ended up having to commit himself, nearly took his own life. And why did he share? He goes, hardly anyone even knows this, but he felt safe to share it because I had shared mine. We were able to connect in that. It's like, oh, he sees me. And he said something that I'll never forget. So we're talking through all this, and of course, I mean, I feel good that I shared this, but of course, I've lost millions of dollars. I mean, just so much pain, reputation, everything's just like gone of how I saw myself. And he looked at, and he said this, I'll never forget this. He goes, how cool is it at 45 you get a do-over? Who gets a do-over at 45? Right? Now, was I in that headspace today and that time? Hell no. But it was a story. He saw it from that perspective. It was a choice. And as as time's gone on and as I've healed and I've really worked through this of finding who I am and detaching my identity to the past, and it's something that happened. It's not who I am. I can look back and now, I'm just turned 48. I am more excited about life than I've ever been in my entire life. I feel more purpose driven. I understand, you know, I've rewritten the story, if you will, of even what's happened in the past. I mean, the way you change the past is you change the story attached to it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can't change the events, but the story can be changed.
Hmm.
And so for me, I can honestly say for Adam, not for I mean, there were a lot of people that were affected by this, and so this isn't to negate anyone else's experience. I can just only share mine. Like I find a lot of gratitude in it, and my purpose has been in this. And the reality is, I built an empire on stilts. So everything to me was money, how people see me. Well, it was, I had a marriage that wasn't working and didn't want to deal with confrontation, just didn't know what to do with it. So rather than putting more and more energy into that, I just went to make more money. That void I was trying to fill with something else. So foundationally, at the time in my divorce, I mean, I weighed 350 pounds. So I was morbidly overweight. So my physical pillar, if you will, was garbage. My relational piece was garbage. My spiritual component was not there. My emotional, mental, foundational block wasn't there, but the money was. So I just kept putting money, and whether it was with the SEC or something else, it was inevitable. It was going to crash because Adam foundationally was not solid. And that crash, that rupture, painful, excruciating. And yet, as I've worked through that, I've changed the narrative. I've changed the story. I've done the work. I've taken accountability. I've spoken the truth. I have nothing left to hide. There's no secrets. I don't have any secrets. That's freeing. So, Al, if you came over to my house and you walked into my bedroom at 3 in the morning, I'm not in here doing something that I'm ashamed. Like, no, I speak
Yeah.
I and I want to be the same guy. It's really important to me that I don't want to be an imposter in the role that I'm playing. There's plenty of people that we know, especially on social media, that present themselves as one way and live a completely different opposite life. I'm not doing that. Unsubscribe. And so to me, it's like I want to be the same guy on this podcast as I am on social media, as I am in person, that I can just be me, that I can be authentically me. And the core of it, I believe, getting back to kind of our theme here, is the truth. Like I've spoken the truth, I've owned it, I've taken accountability. And I believe that the root of even having the strongest, spiritual connection with whatever you believe in is rooted in integrity. And I played with that. And the more integrous we are, the stronger that connection is, the more doors open in your life. And when we think about integrity, the thing is like, well, did you say, did you betray someone, or did you say you're not going to do something to somebody else? To me, the core of integrity is keeping the commitments we make with ourselves. So for example, if I say that I'm going to get up and work out it's Sunday, I don't tell anybody, but in my head, I'm like, I'm going to get up and go work out, right? The alarm goes off at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever. Well, I'm exhausted, decide to sleep in. I'm actually out of integrity. I said I was going to do it and I didn't do it. I
Yeah.
lied to myself. It's fine tuning it to that degree. And I was the yes man. I said yes to everybody. Yes, 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 yes. Why? Because I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be liked. My worth was tied. I mean, literally millions of dollars over the years that I put money into or paid people to or whatever, that was just completely rooted in my ability to not say no, in my ability to not stand in my truth. Why? Because what if they didn't like that? Or what if they have a feeling around it, trying to control the narrative? And it's so funny because we don't have any control over anything other than ourselves. It was, and I was wearing a mask for different people. I was showing up this way with this person. That it's exhausting,
Yes, it is.
And so through this entire process I've gone through, in sitting just with who I am, it's like, well, guess what, Adam? There's people that have always not liked you, and hey, and guess what? There's a lot of people you don't like either. So who are you to assume, you know, that just you don't like everybody. So who are you to think that everybody's going to like you, you know? And so if we know that everybody's judging everybody anyway, and everybody has an opinion about everybody anyway, if that's the case, then no matter what mask I throw on, no matter what I do, as long, I'm going to get judged by somebody else if I'm showing it this way. So why not it just be me? It is the most freeing thing, is just to try to be as authentically me. And if you like me, let's come together. If you don't, that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, it's easier said than done. This is coming from someone for most of their life yes, conceptually that sounds good, but internally, I can't even connect with that. But today, it's the beauty of pain. It's the beauty of going through all of this stuff. It's like I found who I was. Like I know who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm more confident in who I am as a man today than I've ever been. And I'm not making anywhere near the money that I used to. I will. I'm confident of that, but it's not today. And so for someone whose worth was tied to that and all these different people's opinions, it's the most freeing thing. And I've focused on building these foundational pieces that that I was negating, that I was the lack of importance. And again, the pain of all these different pieces many times was to, again, effort into other areas, but a lot of times it was addictive stuff because the pain of it, it's like, I don't know what to deal with that. It's like it's somebody that, for example, if their marriage is struggling, or if they're not having sex, their intimacy's the easy thing is for them to go downstairs, pull up porn and do what,
Mhm.
that's the easy thing. It gives them the temporary relief. But is there fulfillment in that? Is there confidence in that? I
Well,
mean,
does it help the future, right? I mean,
not at
basically
all.
you're pulling away from it further and further. And with you even saying, with that integrity and the accountability, I was a guest on a podcast a couple of months ago, and the host says, "What brings you joy, Al?" And at first I said, "Gosh, that's a really good question. I've never been asked that question." And then I started thinking in my mind, "No, I've been asked that question before. And what are my answers?" My answers are, "Oh, going hiking, being around my grandkids, spending time with family or friends." And this time, something stopped me dead in my tracks. And I really started thinking hard about it. And this was just in a short period of time, but it seems like it's forever inside your head. And my answer that came out even surprised me. It said, what brings me joy is for the first time in my freaking life, I love who Al Richards is.
Yeah, I
I
love that.
love the man that I have finally became or have finally become. Now, am I where I want to be? No, because my version is there is no finish line. I've said this on my show many, many times. There is no finish line when it comes to bettering yourself. There's always something we can work on. Always. Until the day God calls me home, I will continue to go to this direction. I was just telling somebody the other day, I says, we work our ass off to reach the top of a mountain and we think we got it. And we don't. Because if you turn around, you're at the bottom of the next one.
Yeah,
And
100%.
so we're climbing, continuously climbing. And we're gonna have those struggles. We're gonna have them. It's because, it's like I did a post a couple of weeks ago. I was sitting next to the river that goes through Murray Park, and I just happened to look over to my right and I see these two big tree trunks coming out of these piles of concrete. So maybe they were put there during one of our spring runoffs when there was a lot of water. And, here's these 4-inch slabs of concrete piled up on each other. However, with time, this tree has had two main trunks grow out of these slabs of concrete. And now these slabs of concrete are up this high instead of sitting on top of one another. And it's like seeing that sliver of light. That tree, when it was young, saw that sliver of light and it went towards that sliver of light. And now it's lifted those slabs of concrete up. And it started reminding me of life. I mean, I sat there and I was like, my gosh, that is just like life, right? We feel all this weight on top of us, right? You lost a business. You got everybody on your ass. You've got people that you've hurt. You're looking at your identity as now you're worthless or however it may come. However, with time, you were able to lift all that weight off of you and went to the light. Now look where you're at in your life. I lost a 24-year career because of my weekend addiction with cocaine and alcohol. You know, I thought my life was over because that was my identity too. Man, my identity was my job. I worked my way from the lowest paid mechanic to into management, and traveled, spent 3 years in Kentucky getting a plant up and going. I loved my job. However, I was a liar. I was a manipulator. I was someone you could not definitely trust. I was someone that I would go through you, around you, whatever I needed to do to get whatever Al wanted. And because I had to go through those slabs of concrete, it made me who I am today, which again, what brings me joy is I'm in love with Al Richards. And when we go back and we look at ourselves that way, because you said it at the beginning of this show, Adam, we are not who we were a week ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. We are totally different. We will be totally different next week than who we are today because of things that happen in our life, right? They may be something very, very small, but it's something that's changed us into going into a different direction, a better direction. And my version of it is too is going back to spiritual things. there are so many people like yourself, Adam, and so many other people who have gone through the waded through the depths of a cesspool, man, with no snorkel, no mask, man. They've gone through the shit and they've been able to get themselves out of it. And those are the ones now who are there for other people to go, let me help you get through your shit. And
Yeah.
and because we all need that, right? We can't do it alone. You know this. I know you know this. We cannot fricking do it alone. We need people who understand, who have gone through it, right? Because I've not ever lost a business like what you have. I would have no business telling you which direction you need to go because hell, I don't have a clue. I don't know what you went through. You're telling me, but that doesn't mean that I know what you're going through because I've not been in your shoes. But when you find the people who have gone through it and have gone through the turmoil and the divorces and different heartache and struggles, those are the ones you want to talk to because they've made it. And what happens with successful people? They mimic other successful people. I mean, you go use music for an example. Prince was kind of the one that started to where he's like, screw all you guys, all you record labels. I'm going to start my freaking own because you're stealing all my damn money. What happens? Pretty soon he starts leading the way for everyone else. They're calling him up, going, hey, how did you do this? How can I do this? Because we're all here to help one another grow. And that's just how I see it. You talked about at certain times it wasn't the season for you. And I love to use the seasons for an example because it's constant change, right? You can't you can't have the newness of the leaves and the flowers and the greenness of the grass and the bushes and things like that without the winter. You have to have that winter first. And then you have to have that spring, right, to kind of cultivate it and do different things before you can get to the one. However, we all know summer doesn't last forever because eventually everything's got to die off and make room, empty that suitcase to bring something else better in.
Yeah. And I love that you just articulated that because, again, using seasons, the winter can be brutal. It can be painful. It can be long. But the truth is though, we have the power and the ability to, frankly, determine how long we stay in winter.
Mhm.
And it's a choice. And this goes back to just speaking the truth. So a lot of times we're in the winter for longer than we need to be, right? Um, we're honestly we're keeping ourselves stuck there, whether we're not accepting what's happened, whether we're not speaking the truth, whether we're trying to rationalize and do all these different things. But again, when you all of a sudden rip the band-aid off and just accept what is, take radical accountability for the role that you played in it, that those winter months or the winter years turns to months. Those winter months turn to winter weeks. Those winter weeks turn to winter days and winter hours. You can actually move through things significantly quicker when you get to the truth and accountability and acceptance.
Yeah.
It is a superpower that I can't even begin to articulate, and I'm just learning how to play with that. And I've had a lot of changes here just even the last several months, relationally, work wise. Different things have been, I mean, big stuff that has been changing. And as I've accepted what is, detached my worth from it, all these different things, literally exponentially moving through things now, literally in some cases instantly that 3 or 4 years ago would have taken me weeks or months or even years. And it's just, and it takes practice, it takes intentional, but it's a choice. We give our power away.
Yeah.
And a big core of what I do with the men that I work with is I help them rewrite the story, rewrite the narrative. You know, in the world today, especially kind of, well, I'm going to put spirituality in parentheses, a common word that's used a lot today is manifestation. Just manifest it, because our thoughts are powerful.
Hmm.
But in order to have, what we want or be who we want, we have to, if you get to where do we start? You got to reverse engineer back into this. It's like, who is that man or woman have to be in order to have this or be this? You have to have this belief. So for example, if I don't feel like I'm worthy of love, and that's the story I've told myself, Well, and I get into a relationship, I'm going to self-sabotage that to a degree. Something's going to happen because at the core of it, I don't believe I'm worthy of love. But that's just a story. It's just a narrative. I can change the narrative. So I mean, I can say confidently today that I don't question my worth. Like I do I help men do this where we really kind of, what's this personal declaration? Like, who is Adam? Who is Al? And if anyone heard this, they would think I'm a raging egomaniac. But the reality is, it's like at the end of the day, it only matters how I see myself. But one of the things I tell myself every single day is I'm worthy and deserving of anything and everything I want. I do not question my worth. My worth does not come up. That's coming from somebody that did not, that's worth was tied to everything, everybody else. I didn't feel worthy of love. When I went to therapy for the first time nearly 10 years ago, my therapist looked at me and she goes, "Do you feel worthy of love?" I couldn't even answer the question. And the truth was, I didn't. She goes, "Do you feel worthy of love?" And I should have been able to say, "Oh, hell yeah, I do." Nope. Silence. And I sat there in the pain and I'm like, I don't. I don't. That hurts. And the truth is, most people, I found, if someone's making a ton of money, but their marriage isn't working, if you get to the core of it, there's a part of them that feels like they're not worthy of love. Or someone that might have a good marriage, thought, whatever, but they're not making the money. There's a part of them that doesn't feel worthy of success.
Yeah.
Overcoming that one limiting belief will change your life. And again, it's a choice. I always laugh, like, we get in our head and all these different things, but if the formula to success in life, whatever it happens to be, relationally, physically, I mean, it's not that overly complicated. It really isn't. But yet, stories, beliefs, all these different things, like, but if we
We
just go
make
ahead,
it
it's
that
like,
way.
yeah. So again, manifestation, if I want to be something, so I need to first believe that I am this guy. And I've convinced myself, I've rewritten the story. When I first did this, I didn't believe it. It was uncomfortable. And then I go to the mirror and I say it, I record it, I listen to it. I'm reprogramming the old programs that aren't working for me. And again, one of the big things that I say to myself is like, I'm integrous and my word is my bond. That is a core value of mine. And so my oldest son who lives with me, I've asked him to be an accountability partner, and be careful what you ask for. Anytime I say that I'm going to do something, I said, if I don't, I want you to check me. And this was a couple months ago. I said, hey, I'm going to clean the kitchen. He's gone. And, so I clean everything, but I didn't wipe off the counters. So I say to him, I'm like, hey, I text him like, hey, would you mind wiping off the counters? And he goes, you're out of integrity. Check me. And of course, I'm pissed. I have a reaction to it. And I'm like, come on, dude. And I'm angry. But the truth was, he was right. He was reflecting back to me. I said I was going to do something and I didn't do it. I asked him to hold me accountable. I don't want to be that guy. And so what I found is, like, the more integrous I am with me, it just, I feel more confident. Confidence starts with keeping the commitments we make to ourselves. I say no way more than I say yes now. But when I say yes, I do everything I possibly can. Am I perfect? No. But I fall through in what I say now more than I ever have in my entire life. And
Yeah.
again, when you believe it, and then it requires action, it requires that you do things. You got to step into the uncomfortables. You got to step into the unknown. And I believe that you can do anything or be anything, and you can literally have it all. You can have the money, the body, the relationship, the spiritual connection, strong mentally and emotionally. You can have it all, but it will require that you believe it, and it will require that you take the steps necessary to get there. Because my belief, the only difference between someone that's made it and hasn't, or someone that you're not today, is that they've been willing to do something up to this point that you have not. Period.
Oh
End of
yeah.
story.
Yeah. And I believe that's well, get rid of I don't like using the word believe. My version is that's 100% true. You look at a boxer like Mike Tyson back in his days, right? Back in his heydays. If he found out the person he's fighting wakes up at 4 o'clock in the morning to train, he wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning to train. Because it's that mentality to go, okay, you think you're the best? No, I want to be the best, and I believe I am the best. However, I still have to step up my game. And how many times do we see people, like, especially in sports, who they work their butts off, they get to whatever sport they're playing, whether it's basketball, football, hockey, whatever, they end up becoming a superstar, and then they start letting that ego kick in and they start relaxing and going, hey, I'm the best. I don't need to practice. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. And what usually freaking happens? You will watch them implode so quickly. And it's something that when we make that decision, what you're talking about, Adam, it is something that is now lifelong. This isn't a part-time thing you and I are doing, right?
No,
This is
it's not a
just to
sprint,
get to
it's a
where we
marathon.
want to get to. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
it is.
marathon.
We have to continue to to put ourselves in this sandbox every single freaking day because I've tested it. I have tested. I have handed the steering wheel over to my higher power, who I call God, and I've tested it and I've let my ego go, hey, thank you. I got it now. I understand. I get it. And pretty soon I grab hold of that steering wheel. And I'm driving down the road. And next thing I know, I'm in a wall or I'm in the ditch because he lets me know really quick I don't have it.
But when you finally, you give the will to him, right? And then
Mhm.
come back to you, there was a catalyst in your life, something painful, something you didn't like.
Yep.
That was the cat. So again, this is the gift in pain, and I love that you use Mike Tyson as an example. I've seen interviews with Mike Tyson. I mean, here's a man no one can touch. He is the top of the game. I mean, people still say, people argue who the best boxer was, but I mean, in his prime,
Yeah.
those old highlight videos are wild. And then his ego got involved, drugs, alcohol, abuse it, right? And goes to jail. He goes from the top of his game to the bottom, reputation, like all these different things. But if you hear him after the fact, years later, and even today, if he gets interviewed, he will tell you that the greatest time of his life was when he was in prison. And here's this man that's now revered and looked at very differently. And he's still Mike Tyson, he still has his things, but the pain, that horrific thing from going from the highs to the depths of hell in prison, pretty low, you
Mhm.
know, found himself in the darkness and reinvented himself. And you can agree or disagree with how you see him, but that's a perfect example of the beauty of pain, the beauty of self-acceptance. And I believe when our ego gets in check, I mean, how many people do we see that are at the top of their game, get inflated, they know what's right, they know everything, and then many times, boom, comes crashing down. And I
Yeah.
believe the universe, God, if you will, is again, if you're in tech, if you start to get your head too big and like what's better for everybody else or whatever, you will get checked.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's just how it works. And it's a gift. And you and I have been, and I actually like getting checked. I use bowling as an example. You and I have bowled a lot of gutter balls, and I don't want any more gutter balls. I don't want any more 7-degree burns. I want I want bumper rails, if you will, on the bowling alley. So if the ball goes to the side, it's going to hit the side. It's going to hurt, sting. But then what happens? And then it comes back into the middle, and then it hits the other side, sting. But like, and then eventually, I just want the bowl down the middle, and from time to time, it's going to hit the rails. But I'd rather have a 1-degree burn, or just where I just put a band-aid versus I got to go to the hospital. I've danced in that. I don't want to deal with that anymore. And again, one of the greatest things that I have found, I think the core of it is like it's integrity and it's speaking the truth. And as long as you tell the truth, as long as you're integrous, you're going to get where you need to go. It's the core of it. Even the stories attached to it. And the truth. Here's the thing: when we lie and deceit and pretend something didn't happen, even if there's something that happened, and you never turn to it again, that it's still there energetically. It's still there, and until you speak it, until you take accountability, it will affect you in other parts of your life that you don't even realize until you speak the truth.
Yeah. And hopefully with everything that you're saying, Adam, I hope our listeners get to that. And you've said it a couple times during this interview that it takes time to get there, right? We're not talking you have to have perfection.
No.
That's impossible. It's impossible. You cannot live your life with perfection. And it doesn't matter. You finally get to a certain point, but you're still not going to have perfection to get yourself to another point, and I love what you shared about your friend saying, how cool is it at the age of 45 to have another chance? And when you said that, I wanted to jump in at first, but you was on a roll, so I wanted to let you go, And so, but I'm thinking on this, and I'm going, it doesn't matter what freaking age we're at. That is what's so cool about another thing that's so cool about our life, right? We can F up as many times as we F up and we can learn by it. We can F up again and we can learn by it and we can F up again. I mean, there It's not like baseball, three strikes, you're out. You've got so many chances, and I really feel that we have to go through so many things. And I really do feel our life is so well scripted. We don't see it until you start connecting the dots backwards. We may see a little bit of it. However, it's so well scripted that without us going through these darknesses, without us going through the pain, without us, going through divorces or losing businesses or breakups or addiction or whatever, we can always turn the corner in a different direction. We always have that choice. Always. I went through a couple weeks ago, man. I was just really going through a dark place. I was starting to feel sorry for myself, and I'm wanting to do a lot more things that I still haven't been able to get to, but I understand it's that healing process, and I was grieving the loss of my wife, and just really going through some things, and the buffalo came up, and I don't know if a lot of people understand this, but a buffalo, when they're out there on the prairie or whatever, and a storm comes, there is one buffalo that leads the rest of the herd. But they don't lead the herd away from the storm. They lead the herd through the storm because it gets them through it quicker. So, luckily, with my training and a lot of things that I've gone through, I've learned how to just allow those emotions to take their course, right? Take their course, face it, move straight on, just like what you have said about this whole podcast, facing our truth and accepting our truth. Face it head on. Before we know it, we're on the other side.
Yep.
We're on the other side. And literally, is it hard? Hell yeah, it's not freaking easy. But we get to on the other side, and I don't know how many people I've had on my show that go, man, being in recovery, man, was it hard? Yeah, it was hard. But then after you're on the other side, you actually go back and go, oh my gosh, really, that was so simple. I was the one that was making it difficult. So I love this whole thing about the word truth on it, because really, when we do sit in our truth, our life becomes something different. I mean, it has for me. When I got vulnerable, my life became something different. It
Yep.
opened up in so many different ways for the good. Doesn't mean that I still don't get what I like to call shitballs being thrown at me, because life will constantly throw shitballs at you. That's what that's what makes life so amazing, because once we can dodge the shitballs, or even if we get hit in the face and we wipe and clean our face off, there's still something amazing that comes out of it and gets us in a whole different level. However, we cannot get there unless, like what you have said many times, unless we sit in our own damn truth and take accountability.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, because like again, yes, it's a choice. There's a story attached to it. It can all be rewritten. And also it hurts. It's painful. We're gonna fall back into old patterns where, just like you, it's like, I fell back into this. And it's like it's just part of life. So when we can accept it, we still have to feel it to heal it. So you allow yourself to feel it, but it's still a choice of how long you stay in it. So again, I'm accepting like this sucks. I hate this. I don't want this. Ugh. And I've found that if I resist what's happening, it just intensifies it. So I just allow it to happen. I just sit in the uncomfortable. I don't turn to a substance. I don't turn to this. I just sit in it. And the universe moves it, you know? And
It's
I've got
confirmed.
I'll just offer this just even for time's sakes, but I've got an incredible formula. I call it kind of the burn up, which is the name of my company, reset formula, that anytime you find yourself in a frozen state or falling back into old patterns, I've got a formula that literally you can move through anything in a matter of 90 seconds. And it takes practice. It doesn't happen initially, but I've found the more I implement this, so for anyone that's listening, just, they can message me on social or send me a DM, and I'll share it with you, at no cost. It's life's, it's it's the easiest thing, in principle, but then it takes intentional practice. But the more and more I've done this, just like working out, you got to like, it's a new muscle, you got to try it. But the more you do it, I've been able to move through things so much quicker. It doesn't negate the fact that I still feel pain. I still have fears. I still have limiting beliefs, but I'm able to move through them so much quicker because I have resources and tools that I can turn to. And that's, I think, for your experience, mine, we didn't have the tools and the resources to move through it. So we're treading water in the ocean, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And many people unfortunately sink or drown. And you and I are fortunate that we didn't succumb to that. And there's a lot of people that do. And I think it's really important to to let the listeners know that listen, Al and I aren't special. We're just we made choices. We've had plenty of pain and everything, but we also made choice. We also chose differently. We chose not to have our identity tied to it. We chose to move forward, always moving forward. Even this morning, recording this podcast, shared gentleman I had on, talking about this guy's very successful, and but he's had his own failures. But what's the difference between him? He just kept going forward. He didn't make it his identity. He moved forward. And that's where winners, every winner has failed. Every winner has stumbled on their face. Every person has lied, cheated. Everybody's done something, but they didn't tie their identity and they just continue to move forward. And you will get where you need to go as long as you don't quit. You get to that first mountain, you look at the next one. If you want to keep going, you can, or you can choose to stay there. It's a choice.
But if you stay there, you turn stagnant and it
Yeah.
turns a whole different direction. You can't stay in one spot very long.
Yeah.
Adam, it's been an hour already. Gosh, I could sit down here with you for another freaking
Yeah.
hour or 2 hours and talk to you about this stuff because I think we both really get into it and it's
It's
something
a
we both really
it's
enjoy.
our passion.
It is
You
our passion. Yeah. So before I go, how do people find your podcast? I mean, you have an amazing podcast. I've watched you have some really good guests that come on your show. So how do people find your show? And again, how can they find you? I want to make
Yeah.
sure that they know.
Yeah, so I'm on all the major social channels, just my Adam Nugent. So just, Nugent is how you spell my last name. There's a link to my podcast on social. Follow there, message me there. My podcast is called the Burnout Podcast. It's on Apple, Spotify. It's on YouTube, full videos that are on there. So easily accessible. Yeah, and would love people to kind of engage in it. And the whole premise of it, just like yours, is to share the hero's journey. Everybody loves a hero. And I was telling this to someone the other day, in order to be a hero, your own hero, if you look at all the movies, whether even the romantic ones, the action packs, that a hero in the movie at some point or another goes through some sort of trial, has some sort of pain, rises from the ashes. My company's Burnout. And if you look at the logo, it's a man in flames. And it's the concept similar to a phoenix rising is like the loss and the pain, they're actually leveling us up. They're actually for our good. They're gifts. We just don't see it. It's like this beautiful diamond that is wrapped in the most ugly box on the planet. And once you peel the box back, the diamond's there. We just don't see it. And I think the greatest gifts that God gives us, frankly, are pain and fear. And because those are the motivators that move. Otherwise, we don't grow.
Yeah.
Like if we're in this constant existential orgasmic state all the time, we'd be crazy. Nothing's permanent. And so we can have more of those moments as we accept the darkness and we learn from it and we keep moving forward. And it's like, as is life. And when we can accept that that's just the way it is, we can move through challenges quicker and we can level up and we can continue to climb whatever peak. The sky's the limit. Again, you can do anything or be anything you want. You've got to be willing to do it, face your fears, and understand that it's just part of life.
I love it. What a great way to end it. Adam, again, thank you so much. Thank you for taking time.
Pleasure's all mine. I just want to honor you, Al, and you being vulnerable and sharing your story and all the great work you're doing. It's inspiring, and I support what you're doing. And again, this has been a real privilege for me to share and support you, and want to continue to do that. So
Yeah,
thank you.
and I'm here for you. So thank you so much. Well, again, thank you, Emergo Academy, for being our sponsor. Greatly appreciate it, guys. Check them out, emergoacademy.com. Again, the brain first approach. Everything starts right here. And when we learn how to start taking control of this instead of this taking control of us, our life can really, really change. Just want to say thank you again to Adam. I want to say thank you to all our past guests and our future guests, and especially to all you listeners. You guys are the ones that's making this possible. So we greatly appreciate it. Remember this, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.